Hello and welcome. Today we are going to make the first thing I ever learned to make, a grilled cheese. But we're going to amp it up a little bit. We're going to make our own bread and our own butter. Basically everything except the cheese. Now I grew up as an only child and this was the first thing I learned to make. So I would come home from school, I would make it for myself. I even made it for my dad because he doesn't know how to cook at all. And maybe if my parents knew that their offspring would be good at cooking, I would have had siblings. Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about some of the ingredients and the tools you're going to need to make this grilled cheese. Let's first go with the ingredients. If we're making it from scratch, what we want is some bread flour. We're going to use this in a bread machine. We also want some instant yeast, some granulated sugar. You'll also need some oil. I'm going to use grapeseed oil and some table salt. If you want to make your own butter, all we really need is some heavy whipping cream. Otherwise, you can use butter you already have. Now, obviously, one of the most important things about a grilled cheese is the type of cheese you're going to use. I like to use two types of cheeses. I like to use one cheese that will melt very, very easily. That's why I'm using a Munster cheese here. And I like to use another cheese that has some bite to it, some sharpness to it, which is why I'm using a sharp cheddar cheese. All right, let's go over the equipment you're going to need now. Obviously, we're going to need a bread knife to cut through, cutting board, duh. If you're making bread with me, you're going to need a bread maker. If you're making butter with me, a stand mixer with a whisk, some measuring utensils, 1 cup, 1 tablespoon, 1 teaspoon. Non-stick pan with a non-metal spatula. And if you have one, our secret right here, a toaster oven. Let's get started with our bread first. So here is the recipe I like to use. 2.5 teaspoons of yeast, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 cup of warm water, plus 2 tablespoons of warm water. All right, we're going to give this a little stir. Close the lid for 10 minutes. All right, timer went off. Let's go take a look. Oh yeah, you see that? All those bubbles? That's what we want. All right, for this recipe, we're going to need 3 cups of bread flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of oil. Close the lid, and I'm going to show you my settings. For here, I'm going to use cycle 1 for bread, but I'm going to make the crust light. And I'm going to make the loaf size 2 pounds. That's what I want. So this thing is going to take 3 hours. See you in 3 hours. Let's go see our bread. Oh yeah, looks beautiful. All right, now we're going to make butter while our bread is cooling. Okay, all we're going to need is some heavy whipping cream. This is a 1/2 pint of heavy whipping cream. I'm going to pour in the heavy whipping cream and we're going to put it on a low setting, like a 2. If you put it more, then it's just going to start going everywhere. What's going to happen is that the fat and the water are going to start separating. You're going to see butter transform right before your eyes, but we're going to go from liquid to whipped cream to a butter state. So now we're going to let it run. We're going to try to actually get as much moisture out of this as possible, because if you keep more moisture in the butter, it can spoil much faster. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some cold water into the bowl, and we're going to try to extract some more water out. Why we're doing this is what I learned in chemistry: like likes like. Now with my hands, I'm just going to squeeze the butter. We have a bunch of hydrophobic pieces that are in butter, meaning they do not like water, and we have hydrophilic parts, right? So we want the water in the butter to be attracted to the water outside of the butter, so that way the butter itself is dry. Now we're going to slap some more moisture out of the butter. We're going to use a little spatula like this, and we're just going to kind of whack at it. All right, now we are ready to actually put the grilled cheese together. So just to recap what you're going to need, you have our bread that we made. Again, if you have your own bread, feel free to use it, obviously. We have our butter that we made. If you didn't want to make butter, room temperature butter is fine. room temperature is the key. Some salt if you want. If you made your own bread, I have this bread cutter that helps me out. We're gonna need a pan, non-stick pan with a non-metal spatula, and a little toaster oven. All right, so now I'm just going to take my bread. I have my pan getting nice and warm, medium high, and I'm just putting my butter on my bread. And now I'm going to lay down my cheeses. So I have Munster and I have sharp cheddar cheese. All right, so now I'm going to transfer it to the toaster oven, and that's how we're going to get the cheese nice and gooey. We don't want it to be a different way where the bread is burnt and the cheese is gooey, or the bread is not burnt but the cheese is cold. And I'm setting it for only about a couple minutes at a light setting. All right, now I'm going to combine it and put it back on the pan. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. I'm gonna turn off my burner and transfer this to a cutting board. I'm gonna take a little bit of salt. Look at that, we did it. It looks and smells so good. Let's have at it. Man, that was perfect. Flaky, buttery bread, gooey cheese, some salt, some green onion. Wow. Give it a shot, and I am very interested to know the types of cheeses that you use. And hey, you don't have to go full shebang by making your own bread and own butter, but it just makes you look more impressive. And that's all this is, me trying to look more impressive.